Brian Ragland with the RacinBoys at 81 Speedway for night 2 of a 3-night World of Outlaws case construction late model show, and talking with Ben Shelton and Ruben Mireles. And we'll just go ahead and just get the main thing out of the way. The reason you guys are here is not a reason you want to be here, but the tribute you guys had for Rick Eshelman to start the broadcast yesterday was so nice. You've got a couple of drivers. You have a Gundaker and Guston that have memorial wraps on top of their hoods and stuff. And both you guys have spent a lot of time with Rick, and I'll just let you guys kind of talk a little bit about what it was like last night and just trying to fill in those big shoes.
First of all, thanks for having me. Yeah, no, it was definitely emotion. Me and Ben talked about it. He turned to me, he's like, this will be the hardest race we've ever called, you know what I mean? And how you nailed it on the head. Excited to be here, but not excited through the circumstances. You know what I mean? It's a tough deal. Rick was like a father to me, you know what I mean? He picked me up when I was 13 years old, and ever since then, he's always been close to me. And I got to work with him with the Outlaws 2 years on the road. And, when I got the news, it's heartbreaking. And I couldn't even think about, the next Outlaw race. It took me a while to even process that. I was like, like a couple days later, I was like, there's show's going to have to go on here in Kansas in a couple weeks. And it didn't really hit me until I got the phone call. And on Monday this week, I was sitting at a stoplight driving around town, and I was like, holy cow, I'm going to be announcing the World of Outlaws. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go to a World of Outlaw event and Rick's not going to be there. To me, it didn't feel real yet.
Right.
And it is just, I don't know, it still doesn't feel real. Like, I still feel like he's going to show up. You know what I mean? Like, but you stop and think about it. Like, last time when they rolled that video, I was talking to Ben myself. He told me, you did that well. And I was like, man, I don't know. I did a lot of errors, mental mistakes. I did a lot of errors. The emotions really got to me, man. I was wiping tears when I was doing the opening, you know what I mean? And it's a tough deal. And the thing that kept me positive is, of course, having a good team. Ben and Hannah was great. But what kept me positive is knowing that Rick would want this show to go on. He would want everyone to be out here. And that's kind of been my motivation this weekend, just trying to carry his legacy through that.
And Ben, you've spent a lot of time with James Essex, and last week they had their first show for the World Championship. And just listening to James when he first talked about it, that was pretty tough for everyone to hear.
It's tough because we're a fraternity.
Yeah.
And when you lose somebody, it doesn't matter if they're your best friend, if it's somebody you work alongside, or somebody you just see once or twice a year, you're still family. And we're a small group. You and I talked at I-80 Speedway, and we talked about this is a niche sport, man. We're not professional baseball. We're not NASCAR. We're a smaller sport, and because of that, we're a tight-knit group community. And when we lose somebody, we know those people. It's not somebody we've just seen interviewed or that we've seen in passing. This is somebody that we've gone to lunch with, we've gone to dinner with. Ruben's rode up down the road with him. Yep. Rick and I have had professional conversations. We have personal conversations away from the track. So when you lose them, it's like you lose a part of yourself. And, full transparency, you start questioning, you're like, could that even be me one day? Because it is so unbelievable that somebody, Rick's so positive. Rick would be probably the last person I would have guessed, because there's a lot of us that battle emotions and things. Rick would have been the last one, and when you see somebody like Rick and you're like, if that guy who seemed to be the most positive, strongest guy I know, if he's struggling, do I need to pay more attention to myself? Do I need to pay more attention to the people around me? Am I not doing a good job of watching my friends? And there's no silver lining that come out of losing Rick, but we can learn lessons. Maybe the lessons are to be more cognizant not only of ourselves, but of the people around us, and make sure that maybe we ask that extra question that we might not have done before, because this life's tough. Ruben and I talked about it in the hotel room.
It's not easy going up and down the road.
It's not, and then if you're alone, and if things are great, this life is tough. Yesterday morning, I got up at 4 a.m. I drove 8 hours to Humboldt, Kansas. We worked the show. I drove 2 hours after that to Wichita. I got in bed at 3 a.m. almost 24 hours later, and I had a great team around me. I had Ruben and Hannah and all the Dirt Vision staff, and it was still, by the time you go down, man, you're not thinking straight. You're tired, and your Rick's in the back of your mind, thinking about losing him. So I think for me, it's been a reality check, and it's been a self-health check, and I hope that everybody's doing that, because I don't want to think about ever losing anybody else that maybe could have made a phone call and it could have made all the difference.
I was talking to Guston last night, and I, before the run at Humboldt, and I told him, I said, you do realize that you were the last winner that Rick announced, and B, the great Rickisms that I call him. He's knocking on the door like a trick-or-treater with a sweet tooth.
Yep.
Those things were just awesome. Those one-liners he came up with.
Yeah, and he was the king of that. You know what I mean? It's just the jokes too. He was the king of the jokes that he had. The one-liners. How I told him, and I remember having this conversation with Rick. It was literally during Summer Nationals 2 months ago, and I was like, Rick, I wish I was funny like you. And he's like, Ruben, that's just not your style. You're more the stats kind of professional type kind of guy. I'm just that funny personality kind of guy, and that's okay. You know, that's just who you are. And that's who I am. And I told him, like, how do you come up with that? He's like, I just, a lot of windshield time, you know what I mean? He'd drive up and down the road and just thinking of all these crazy things. So that's why he'll always be the king of that, man. I always say I'm not the funny guy. And the other announcers out there say some goofy stuff, but no one's going to come close to the things that he would say, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I, to that point, probably Rick, I probably gave him grief more as much as anybody else. I'm like, Rick, we gotta stop, man. I mean, I like making jokes, but you know,
you're afraid he's going to go to that line and take a one step.
That's what I said last night on the broadcast. Rick was an HR nightmare, but you know, looking back, and man, hindsight's always 20/20. But we might give him grief, but even though I never wanted to crack a smile around him, there were some times where he would set it up and I would start laughing internally because I knew what was coming.
Right.
And so, yeah, you know, to Ruben's point, everybody's different. And, you know, as I said in a few interviews, racing's one big family, and if you're family, you fight and you bicker. And Rick and I, man, we had some epic bickers along the way. But probably one of the things I'm most thankful for is the past few years we got back to a really good place. You know, it was, let's not forget, Rick left Outlaws abruptly in 2013. And that was when they hired me. He left middle of the season, a few days before Fairbury for the Parade Dirt Classic. And Outlaws called me, and they're like, Eshelman's out. And I came and I started announcing, and I announced the rest of that year and the next 2 years. And I just realized that full-time life on the road and where I wanted to be. And I don't think he loved me the most during those times. And you hear stuff, and I don't know that I loved him the most during that. But that's life, man. And we both grew up, and we got to a point, we talked a decent amount at Fairbury back in late July. And I think I'm going to be most thankful for that's what I remember Rick as. And I saw a side of Rick there that maybe I hadn't really seen before, where maybe we had a couple of conversations where he was serious, but like in a very caring kind of way serious. Right. And, you know, I'm probably going to second guess that forever, that maybe is there something I should have seen there. But you don't, because that just wasn't on your radar, it wasn't. But, man, there's so many things that are in my mind. There were 3 or 4 lines I used last night. Ruben had 3 or 4 lines that he used. That I realized, as much as I gave the guy grief, I used the damn lines when I announced. So Rick is going to live on in all of us, but, you know, I selfishly hope that moving forward, I hope this guy, Ruben Mireles, I hope he's the voice of the World of Outlaws. I think he deserves it.
Yep.
But it's never going to be right coming to an event that Rick's not here, just because Rick lived and breathed for the World of Outlaws. Yeah, that's the harsh reality.
There was definitely that little lull that when I called in on the RacinBoys this morning, I said there was just, everything was kind of going as usual, but there was that little cloud that was just kind of, little space that was empty, and he's definitely going to be missed.
I will say, you know, I'm actually, you know, glad. I couldn't have done this if it was like the weekend after we found out. You know what I mean? I'm kind of glad there was a little bit of time to breathe. I'm telling you, I cried my eyes out. I've never cried so hard, my chest hurt. So I just want to thank, you know, World Racing Group and for coming up with this great idea. I mean, Ben's one of the best, and working with them and working with Hannah, and it's just, I'm glad there was a couple weeks of space, because I don't know if I could have done this, man. It was that emotional, and Ben brought up a point earlier, a couple minutes ago. This is a reality self-check on yourself. You know what I mean? So if you're listening to this interview, whoever you are, just, you know, stop and take a breather for a minute. You know what I mean? I know a lot of us work hard and want to put food on the table and stuff like that, but let's take a minute, take a deep breath, and just kind of, you know, go through your thoughts, and don't ever be afraid to reach out to someone. You know what I mean? We're all human. We all put our pants on the same. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's one thing that Rick taught me. I always looked up to Rick a lot. I looked at him like he was treasure. You know what I mean? And he told me one day, he's like, Ruben, I put my pants on the same way you do, bud. And whenever he told me that, it's kind of like, you know, it's true, man. Like, we're all just human, so even if it's me that you have to reach out to and you're listening to this interview, please do. So just everyone work on yourself, and let's make this a better world.
And I want to touch on what he said. 110%. We all, anybody that I think comes up to any of us at the racetrack, they realize how down to earth we are. And sometimes people that don't know us, they develop perceptions. But you know, and I extended this during COVID. I did some Facebook Lives, and I said, hey, if you're struggling right now, a lot of us are. I was like, text me, call me. You know, and I don't want anybody to ever feel like they're alone, because at the end of the day, I told my wife, I found out at Little Rock Short Track Nationals that Saturday, and that was an emotional weekend because that was the last day for that racetrack. It was already very emotional, and I sit there in my motorhome, like Ruben said, man, maybe I needed a good cry because I haven't cried that much in a while.
Yep.
And I just said, I never want to feel this way again, and I never want the people around me to feel this way. And I think that's the big thing. Just, you're not alone. So, yeah, reach out. If it isn't us, reach out to somebody. And I don't want this to turn into an infomercial, but this is real, man. We lost one of the greats of our sport, but we lost a great friend, a great person. And I like to think it could have been prevented, and maybe for somebody else we can prevent it.
Yep.
And sometimes that I've learned, and we'll move on after this, but sometimes I've learned sometimes a stranger is the best person to talk to.
Well, it's easier.
It's easier. They don't know, and you can explain it. They can take a different look at it.
Exactly. As
As we're sitting here at 81 Speedway, and real quick, we'll talk a little bit about Humboldt. First time for the World of Outlaws being there, and I think it was a great show. Obviously, Mother Nature had her plans with the wind that kind of, didn't let the track get to where it was, but we go 40 laps, green flag. You had Mike Merler starting from the back of the pack, running up to fourth. You had Chase Youngins from Manhattan, Kansan winning the first one at Humboldt. All in all, I think it was a pretty successful night.
I think it was very successful because you don't know what to expect out of a crowd that's not a late model town. Obviously, some massive modified shows there. They're known for King of America. So I thought the crowd was solid. I expected 25 to 26 cars. We had 38. So that was through the roof. And and I'll say this about the track last night. Some people will say, well, it was starting to latch up 1 and 2. I don't think it was latching as much as these guys. We're a monkey see, monkey do sport, and I watch it happen a lot. And the thing that stuck out to me is all those guys go to the bottom, but when Younghans had to move up and go around cars, he could in 1 and 2. 3 and 4 was anybody's game. It was an ice skating rink down there. So I think all things considered, hey, man, we're in Kansas. The freaking wind's going to blow 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's doing that today at 81 Speedway. That's the nature of the beast. And I think that we saw last night the guys that had maneuverable cars, they could get out of that bottom. And then in 3 and 4, it was anybody's guess. So, I rate it as a success. I hope that Humboldt can continue to have late model shows. Ruben, I'll get your input. But, if I'm giving it a grade, I would probably give it a B+ last night on the first World of Outlaws show.
Yeah, obviously it's Kansas, and you come to an area where late models aren't that big. I'm from the West. I'm originally from New Mexico, West Texas. And to see late models this healthy, this far west is pretty awesome, because the World of Outlaws have been to Wyoming and New Mexico before. And Kansas is pretty far west. You look at the map, Dallas is just straight south from here, Oklahoma City, stuff like that. So we're pretty far west, man. I thought it was great. The car count was awesome. We got to see some names like from the Cash Money series, from the High Plains late model series, kind of series that we really don't touch on, series that people honestly don't even know about, the Sooner series, I thought that was really good to see guys like that run out there, like Scott McGee last night, who would have heard of Scott McGee, that was, or Jacob McGee, sorry, he was really good. I thought it was a positive thing for the sport, first of all, seeing these West guys see the health, the track was great, the fans were great, hell, I think Toto was in the stands last night too, you know what I mean?
Toto blew out of the stands last night, Toto's gone.
He flew out north with the witch on the stick, I think that's where he went.
Yeah, so overall, great. Yeah, B+ is great. Honestly, being a modified country, I think the fans showed out here, and 81 Speedway looks great. I know the Outlaws have been here before, so loving this Kansas swing. I hope we get to do it again.
How big is this swing with Humboldt 81 and going up to US 36? And my thought is, if this turns out pretty good, and I'm looking at this right now, that this could be the start of something on a regular basis with the late models.
I think so. The unknown, man. It's 84 degrees today on October 22nd.
And this does not happen in October in Kansas.
That's my point, is right now, and I told John Allen yesterday there at Humboldt, I said, you're going to know tonight if this show works. I said, because you have Chamber of Commerce weather, it's a Friday night, and you got a great field of cars coming in that you've been able to advertise. I was like, if it doesn't work tonight, it never works. And same deal on this, and who's to say you could have this weather again next year, or it could be snowing on these days next year. You never know. USMTS has had swings during this time of year where they've been rained or snowed out. So I think the weather's the great controller. What we're seeing from last night to tonight to tomorrow, apart from it being windy, is you're seeing, okay, if we've got good weather and we got 30 plus the best dirt late model pilots in the country, will the fans come out? Are these shows feasible? And to me, that's all you can ask for. You almost know what best case is right out of the gate.
Exactly. And
then you work backwards from that. Whereas if we come out here and it's a 40% chance of rain, it's 51 degrees today, you don't get a good gauge on it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The one thing that I think is really interesting is you take a look at the 3 different tracks. You got Humboldt, And as we talked yesterday, I kind of look at it as a little bit of a Fairbury with a little bit longer straight. This I see as a small Lucas Oil with a little bit of banking, and then you're going to go to US 36, a little bit shorter with even higher banking. I mean, that's 3 solid different type of tracks.
Yeah, it is. I mean, me and Ben mentioned it in the broadcast last night. I'm a little biased because I've done the Summer Nationals the past 5 years, so I love those.
Sorry, we just dumped some staff in the infield. They hit a bump and dumped. Sorry about that.
But they get up laughing.
They did get up laughing.
They get up laughing.
So they're good.
That's what we do in Kansas.
The wind may have blew their hats down to the casino, but anyway, no, lost my train of thought there. No, I'm a little biased. You know, did the Summer Nationals.
Oh, I'm sorry. John Allen was driving the vehicle. We'll make note of that.
The track runners. That's funny.
So
Ruben, take 3.
What was the question? No, no. I just love the bull rings. You know what I mean? I love the bull rings. I love this black dirt. You know, that's what gets me excited. You know what I mean? And it produces good racing. It's heavy and then it slicks off, and we saw that last night. So I think it's a great little swing. You know, when guys travel far, because these guys don't live close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they travel far out here, I think it's making it worth it for them. They're coming to 3 awesome facilities, 3 great racetracks, and I think that's what makes it all worth it. I love these tracks.
Talk to Ben at I-80, and we'll kind of go through that a little bit. The state of late models right now, since we have this big change, I don't think I can remember a silly season of driver changes in late models like we've seen in the past, month and a half. This thing's been nuts.
It's only getting crazier.
Yeah.
There's a lot still to drop.
Wait a minute, this isn't NASCAR.
No, and there's a lot to drop that I've been made aware of this week. And I literally, I told somebody yesterday, we talked about it at lunch today, Ruben.
Yeah.
I said, it seems like every single person's changing cars. It's just not on the national level. It's on the regional all the way down to the local. I think there's drivers that are getting on social media and they're seeing their car being prepped for an event, and that's how they're finding out they're no longer in that car. There's some things happening. That's not all the case, but I've seen some local and regional things the past few days that make me believe maybe those drivers didn't know this was coming, you know? It is crazy, and it's hard to keep up with, and I think that's a function of how much racing there is and the expectation level. With so much money on the line, teams expect to succeed every night, and the reality is, if your name's not Jonathan Davenport, it's hard to succeed every night now. You know, he's had almost a $2 million year, but there's a lot of other guys who used to having 20-plus wins. Brandon Shepard, he's got 13 wins right now. That's a banner year by a lot of guys' standards. Yeah. He feels like it's a little bit of an off year. And it's just how tough things are. Would you agree, Ruben?
It's absolutely, you're absolutely right. But the thing, Ben, that I'm looking forward to next year, you look at the trend. Like this year, your name has to be Jonathan Davenport. Last year, your name had to be Brandon Overton. You know, the years before had to be Jimmy Owens or Brandon Shepard. You know what I mean? There's just that cycle every year. I don't know what happens. These guys put the cars in the shop and hibernate, and then the next year it's like they don't have the speed anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know what happens. It's just they have the speed. It's just they don't have those big money years. So it's just going to be interesting, man. With the silly season, it's just it's going to be a great setup for 2023.
The one thing that, and I haven't read too much about it since they came out, is the late model tire. What's the latest on that? Is there going to be a set late model tire, or
it is? And they're wanting. I'm heavily involved in promotions with the Wild West Shootout that's down bottom of Speedway Park in January. They want to debut it there, and we're hoping that they're going to be available. We're in constant communication with Hoosier, and we're working on that. But yeah, basically the gist of it is, you know, you're going to have the LMN 2, 3, and 4, or the base tires. They're basically a 20, 30, 40. They're replacing those compounds, and that's going to become the say-all, be-all. You know, some of the events I think like we're going to do at the Wild West Shootout is we're going to allow, if you have the comparable 30s or 40s, you can run those in addition to the 3 or the 4. That's the direction they're headed. You know, they say the tires are going to be cheaper. They're going to be easier to produce. Hope all these things are true. They're talking about no grooving and siping. We'll see how that goes. I've seen some pushback from the racers. They feel like the tires aren't going to last as long if they can't prep them because they can't get the heat out of them. They can't cut them up. But yeah, that's the direction. I mean, we had the announcement at the World 100, had a press conference there. Tony Stewart was there, and you know, we had Representative Steve Francis from, you know, World Racing Group, Lucas Oil. You had Rick Schwally. You know, all these were on hand to be there part of the announcement. So if I get that step in the right direction, I feel like we're still figuring out how to tie our shoes a little bit with it, but I think it is a step in the right direction, because right now, man, some of these guys, you know, a Gordy Gundaker might get rained out at a World of Outlaws event, and intend to go to a Lucas Oil event, he might have types of tires in his trailer, and they might not be the right ones. That's what they're trying to overcome.
Right.
And of course, you know, the rule package. I know the series at the beginning of this year wanted to have the same rule package. You know what I mean? Just for the same thing that Ben just mentioned. And you mentioned those no siping and no grooving. The reason, you know, because sometimes they'll groove way too deep and it burns the tire off right away. You know what I mean? You get to the wire, so it's not good. So hopefully that's a positive. We'll see how that lasts. But yeah, the Hoosiers 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to be interesting. And you know, just with the world and the supply chain is nowadays, I personally think it's going to be a positive. Everyone's on the same page now. And honestly, I think it might be an equalizer. You know what I mean? Because, you know, you go down to the West and they use D55s. You know what I mean? And you come over here and they use these 10, 20, 30s. They don't know what these are. You know what I mean? It's a whole different thing. It's like running on high heels compared to the Skechers. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be a positive.
That's a Rickism. Yeah. High heels to the Skechers. I like that.
There you go. So honestly, I think it might be an equalizer in racing a little bit, and a little bit for the positive, and hopefully it helps the supply chain management on the Hoosier tires.
One thing I want to throw out real quick is World Championships. Garrett Smith. This guy, I mean, 19, did he have a weekend or what?
Yeah, you know, it was surreal, and he just put himself in position to be successful, and then, you know, from the pole was the place to be Saturday night, but, you know, for a 19-year-old, he's the youngest winner in the history of the Dirt Track World Championship. Big deal. And that kid's got a world of talent. You know, he's got Cody Mallory turning wrenches, and Cody's worked with a lot of teams. Cody knows how to make guys go fast. So, I mean, that was a huge deal, you know, $100,000, and he's going to run the World Finals, and then they're going to call it a year. I was asking if he's going to need more of the late season events, and he's like, I got to get the hauler painted. I'm like, come on, man, we're talking about getting the hauler painted? He actually told me that yesterday. So, yeah, you know, the kid's got a lot of a talent, and he's fun. He's a polarizing driver because he's not afraid to get a little aggressive. And
you never know where he's going to be.
Yeah.
And he's a smart kid for listening to one of the best in Scott Bloomquist.
Yeah, Cody Mallory, one of his, of course, and him too. So the thing about Garrett, you know, he's so young and winning that Dirt Track World Championship. I know a lot of people you can make the comment, oh, well, is rubber down. I'll tell you what, rubber down racing is some of the hardest racing ever because, especially how Ben said, he's 19 years old. You know what I mean? Like to be that calm, cool, and collected and hit your mark every lap for that long distance of a race is not an easy task. You know what I mean? Hell, even being 30 years old and having Jonathan Davenport or someone like that behind you is not an easy task. So for him to handle it the way he did at the age of 19 in his very young career, that kid is going places. He's one of the next, big names in our sport for sure.
He had that situation where Brandon Overton got inside him in 3 and 4, and he still was able to pull that coming out of 4. And 99 times out of 100, you get a rookie or a young kid in there, and he's got Overton inside him.
Yeah.
He's going to hit the gas a little bit quick, and that back end's going to come around. And he's done, and he didn't. He just stayed with it and just got back into one.
Showed a lot of maturity for his age.
Yeah, and it just showed where he was getting at right now.
The kid's good. They got a solid team. They got some solid backing. You know, next year will be interesting. I think, you know, he could really, as big as this year was, you know, we'll see at Speed Weeks because he could come out guns blazing, or sometimes, you know, you get a little bit, you know, what worked this year doesn't work next year and you struggle. You know, we've seen that. Brandon Overton, again, hasn't struggled. He's got, I think, 13, 14 wins, but by his standards. So, yeah, I mean, but it's cool to see these young guys coming in. We had a heat race last night, and I think it was Trevor Gundaker, Billy Moyer Jr., Chase Younghands, and there was one more young guy, maybe Andrew Kasiski, and I was like, this is what you love. You still want to see these next, and especially these second and third generation drivers as well.
Yeah. And talking with Ben Shelton and Ruben Mireles as we're getting ready for 81 Speedway, night 2 of the 3-day swing for the Case Construction World of Outlaw late models. And like I said, had talked to you yesterday, Ben, and wanted to get with you two guys, and haven't had a chance to meet Ruben yet, and seen Ruben on the air and work in the infield, and wanted to get a chance to do that. And this tonight at 81, I think, is going to be, I don't want to say the determining factor, but we knew, you know, with the B+ at Humboldt, I think this really can solidify something. And I'll even go this far. There's been talk about, you know, Silver Dollar Nationals with I-80 situation, everything like that. I could see Silver Dollar Nationals here in a track like this and having a big show like that.
You know, it's a possibility, and tonight's going to show a lot. You know, there's definitely a handful of tracks. Talked to Joe Kasiski last night as well.
I saw him here today, too.
And Joe told me that as of yesterday, the final paper is not signed yet. They are very close.
I was going to ask you about that.
He said he had a phone call on the way to the racetrack last night, and they're basically, they're agreed on everything. They just got they have one last little thing to settle, and he's thinking any day. So, yeah, You know, and I know he's got a few suitors. I mean, this place obviously is laid out great for that.
It is.
It's probably not a whole lot different configuration than I-80. I mean, you mentioned Lucas Oil Speedway. I think this place is probably about 40% bigger than Lucas Oil Speedway. These are some long straightaways in this place.
They are.
So this is a big 3/8. I mean, I would imagine on the outside fence, we're pegging a half-mile easy. So, you know, this could be a possibility. The good thing is this facility's great. You got a lot of hotels, the location. So
easy access to the highway.
Easy access. So who knows, man? We don't know where anything's going to land moving forward.
And I do got to say, this is something that no one ever talks about, but these are things that I think about for teams that are thinking about traveling out here. I will say Kansas has very nice highways, you know what I mean? So, like, your race car ain't going to be upside down when you unload it in the hauler when you go through, like, those Illinois highways. You know what I mean?
Hey, don't forget Missouri. Worst I-80 stretch through.
Yes,
I'm just going to throw that out
I'm just
there.
saying, Kansas is really nice. People are friendly here. Food's great. Just, you know, and this is a nice area, too. So it's I hope to see more people and more fans support this as the years come.
Talking with Ben Shelton and Ruben Mireles as we get set at 81 Speedway here on the Saturday night. Huge thanks to you guys coming on and just kind of throwing things out, just talking late model and stuff. It's going to be a great show tonight, and as they're getting ready to, as they just got done watering the track a little bit more, and if we can get that wind to die down, I think it's going to be a heck of a show.
I think we're in Kansas. I don't think this wind ever stops. We're in Kansas. So, well, you know, they're staying on top of it. They've been watering it. They just came through and tilled it again. And, man, if we don't have a great track tonight, it's not for lack of trying. And that's all you can ask out of any promoter.
I'll tell you this, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, 20 degrees.
Well, you know, it was 31 when I left Memphis yesterday.
Yeah,
and
so you guys had that
south of
split
here.
that came through.
So, yeah, but, I think the highest afternoon was get as high as 87, which is mind-blowing. But, no, we're, excited to be here. Looking forward to tomorrow. Like Ruben, I got a, affinity for the bull rings, high bank bull rings. Had a great time last night. Very excited for tonight. And, again, this is the beauty of dirt track racing. 3 days, 3 totally different tracks. And, whether you're a racer or a fan, one of these 3 days has got something for you. And if it doesn't, you're in the wrong sport. You need to move down the road. If one of these 3 tracks doesn't wet your whistle, then maybe you don't like dirt track racing.
So, I'm not going to lie, because Ben had asked me yesterday, have you been to these tracks? And I was like, Humboldt has always been bucket list for me because I've never been. But I actually have been to 81 before. It was like 6 years ago. I came to watch the USMTS race. I couldn't remember the name of the track, but I pulled into the property, and I saw the stands, and I was like, oh, wait, I've been here. So
I've been there.
Yes, I've been
here.
here.
He's too young for his memory to be fading like that.
I know, right?
I will tell you the last late model race that I remember was in the 90s when Fast Freddie Smith would have a Tampa. Yeah, you're sitting there going, yeah, that dates me a few years.
Yeah, I mean... Well, and you got to think, you had that. I was talking to Billy Moyer. He came here back in the 90s there again.
Yep.
And then, 2017, the World of Outlaws were last here. So, bringing late models to this area, this is, when you think of Wichita, you probably are more prone to think of guys like Tanner Mullins. The modified guys, the aces that come out of here that go all over the country and do well. You don't think about big-time late model races. And hopefully tonight we can put this place on the late model landscape once again.
And not to mention, I'm just going to talk a little bit, like scheduling-wise, like my home track is having Big Fall Nationals, you know what I mean? The guys like Kate Dillard and Stormy and Johnny Scott, even like Terry Phillips, guys like that could have maybe pulled out a late model and run this weekend with us, you know what I mean? And that would have put us almost at 45 cars, almost 50, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking just, if the schedule plays out right next year with USMTS and Fall Nationals down there in the Southwest, I think this could be even a bigger, better weekend than what it was this year.
Yeah, if you get the prime spot, because you have guys getting ready for Charlotte, you have guys getting ready for New Mexico, and as you said, expecting maybe high 20s, you get 38 cars to show up for the first time in a little town in Humboldt. That's pretty good. You're not going to complain about it.
I mean, zero complaints.
Zero.
And plus the food was pretty good. The chili in Humboldt's always good.
I did not get to try it.
Oh my God! Well, you're gonna have to try it next time. Ben Shelton and Ruben Mireles, thanks guys for joining us, and
thanks for having us.
And obviously next time we get you guys together, we're gonna have to do this again.
100%. Thank you.
All right, thanks, man.